Hi guys, welcome to this new video on Angular 16 lifecycle hooks. So I will be talking about all 8 lifecycle hooks in Angular 16. So I'll start off creating a new Angular 16 project and I will explain you with examples that why to use which hook, where to use it, and how to use particular hook in Angular 16. So before moving forward, I just want to request you guys that I'm spending a lot of time building these videos. So don't forget to subscribe my channel and hit the bell icon so you can get the notification for upcoming videos. So I have opened up this VS Code and from here I'll be creating a new Angular 16 project. Some people don't know how to create latest Angular 16 project. It's so simple. What you need to do is you need to install the latest node version, and current node version of mine is 18.16. You need to download this latest version. It is the latest stable version currently on the date when I'm recording this video. Okay, and let me show you my npm version as well. When I install the latest node version, this npm version will be automatically installed. Okay, and once the npm is updated, you then go to create sudo, since I'm using Mac, and npm install -g and angular/cli. And when you will install this Angular CLI, you will have the Angular CLI for Angular version 16. So let me show you what is the current version of Angular CLI currently in my system, and you can see that it is 16.1.5. and now when I will be creating a new Angular project, it will be by default created the Angular 16 project. Okay, so now let's go ahead and create a new Angular 16 project. So I'll just enter new, so life cycle, let me name it Angular 16 hooks, and I will hit enter and it will ask me I want to go with the routing. So let's go with the basic routing setup, and let's go with the SCSS, and it is installing the node modules and all the dependencies required to run our Angular 16 project. So our Angular 16 project is created after around 1 minute. Let me go ahead and try to run our project and see how it is looking like on the browser. If we go to the package.json file, you can see that this is the command that I have run. So it will run the ngserve command to run it on our browser. So currently it's running in localhost 4200. Let's go to the browser and I will refresh, and this is the current UI provided by Angular by default whenever we create a new Angular project. Okay, so I'm gonna go to the source and I'm going to go to the app, and this is the default HTML that we are given with. I don't need any of this HTML, so I'll be removing all this HTML. So I'll remove it, so it will not show anything and it will show the blank page. So now let's learn Angular 16 lifecycle hooks. So the first hook is that Angular ngOnChanges, and this is, I think, one of the most important hook in Angular, and a bit more time taking to understand and learn that where we need to use it. So let's go ahead in Angular project, and currently, as you know, I have removed everything from the HTML file of initial app component, and this is the component TypeScript file. So this is the title. I will be removing this title. I don't need this. So first of all, what I need to do is I need to create another child component for this app component, because in order to learn ngOnChanges hook, we need to have some child parent relationship in terms of components in Angular. Okay, so I will use command line CLI. So I will write the G for generate and C for component, and then I will be giving the name of the component, but I want to create my components within the components folder, and then I will be creating a new component, and for your understanding I will name this component a child component. Okay, so this new folder is created, components, and inside it the child folder is created as well, and inside it, as you know, the 4 files are created. One is HTML, another is the CSS file, other one is the TypeScript, and the unit testing file. So I will not be writing anything currently inside it. So I'm gonna go inside my HTML, and inside it let me create one div. So let me give a style a bit so that our text is aligned to the center, everything we are going to show inside it. And let me welcome to Angular 16 hooks tutorial. Okay, So after this heading, I'll be creating another div, and inside it I'll be writing some code to explain you what is ngOnChanges hook do. So first of all, I'm gonna go in this component, and in this component I'll be creating one variable. So let me go inside, and here I'll be creating one private variable. So I'm going to create number, and it is of type number, and let me give any number to it. Okay, and I'm going to create a setter and getter for this particular number, because whenever we create a private variable, we need to have some kind of functions to actually return its value or set its value. But Angular provides us a setter getter that we can use. So get, I'll be naming it counter, and it is going to return this dot number. Okay, and after that I can set the counter. Okay, and it will take the value, and value will be added over here. So the suggestion was given by this Tab 9 Pro AI extension that I'm using. You can install it, and it is really helpful. It automatically suggests a code that we are expecting to write. Sometimes it gives us right code, sometimes it gives us wrong code. Okay, so after this I have actually added its setter. Now I'm gonna go in my HTML, and here inside this div I'm going to create a button. So in this button I'm going to add some click events, and inside it I'm going to add the increment button, and I'm going to create another button which is for the decrement, and these functions are not yet created in the component, so it will throw an error if we run our project. So let's go into our component and create these functions so that we are able to increase or decrease its value. So I'm going to create increment, and it's going to write this dot counter. I'm using the setter function to change its value, and then I'm going to add the decrement function to decrease its value, right? And then I have already created this child component. Let me go to this HTML file, and here I'm going to fetch that child component that I have created, and the decorators, the selector for the child component should be app-child. All right, so if I go to this child component TS, and this is the selector, and it is the convention whenever we create a new component, it is appended with the app-child before it. Okay, so here inside it I need to pass its value, the value that I've just created. Okay, so I'm going to name this my counter equals to, and then the counter. And remember that this counter is a setter function, actually the getter function that we have created in our app component over here. Okay, because we cannot set this number directly because it is a private. Okay, so this is being passed to the child component, and I won't be passing any other component. Let's go to the child component now, and here I'm going to receive these values using the add input decorator. So I'm going to write add input, and I'm going to name it my counter. So make sure you import input at the top from Angular core. So I have imported it, and this my counter is of type number, and it is asking me to initialize the first value for it. So I'll be giving it the optional value by just adding this exclamation mark. Let me remove this curly braces, and now we are receiving this value inside our child component. All right, and now I'm going to create hook which I want to explain you, then that is ngOnChanges. Okay, so this particular hook needs to be imported at the top. So I will be writing onChanges, and I need to import this as well over here. So I can write the implements onChanges. Okay, so you can see errors are gone, and let me log some data. So ngOnChanges. All right, so let me run my project, npm run start, And in this project, I'm gonna go to the browser. Let's try to refresh in order to see our project is working. And yes, our project is working. Let me first go ahead and show that number, that if the increment and decrement buttons are working fine or not. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to show that increment decrement in my child component because I'm passing its value to the child component. So inside it, I will be writing the number. So in order to make it visible, I'm going to write my counter, which is the variable that I have created, and it should be within the double curly braces. All right, so you can see this is the number, and if I increment, and this number is getting incremented, and if I decrement, this number is getting decremented. It means that we are successfully passing the data from parent component to the child component, and we are changing this value from the parent component, and it is reflecting in the child component. All right, so now let's go to our project, and here I want to show you what does this child component ngOnChanges hook do. So if we are passing some value using the input decorator from parent component to a child component, then this particular hook is going to detect and receive that change, that which variable actually got changed, and this is its previous value and this is its next value. All right, so I'm going to add few parameters inside it, and these parameters are called simple changes. So I'm going to write the changes, and it is of type the simple changes, and it will not return anything. And you can see at the top, simple changes is imported as well. All right, and inside it, this simple changes is an array actually, and we can iterate through to see that how many variables got changed. So currently we have one variable, but still it will be an array. So I will be writing the const prop name in changes. Okay, so this is the function that I have created, and I'm going to first detect that the change, and it is of type simple change, and we need to import this simple change as well at the top from the Angular core, and we can get the value from the changes and then the prop name. So let me log that output. So I'll be creating a new variable so I can keep on printing the changed log on this UI, and this is for better understanding that how this particular hook works. So I'll be creating a new array. So I'll be writing the public change log, and it is of type string, of type array, and initially it will be an empty array. Okay, and here let me add this changelog dot push, and inside it I'm going to create that. So first of all, it is ngOnChanges, and I'm going to write prop name. So this prop name, its current value is equals to this change dot current value, but we can store it in a variable rather than directly fetching it. So I'm going to create a new variable. So current, I can write the JSON dot stringify, and then I can write change dot current value. Okay, and just like this, I can create the previous value like this, and after this I can add that variable that I've just created. So it would be a current value. Okay, and after this, let me add the previous value, and it will be the previous. Okay, and another variable that it gives us is the first change. It gives us the boolean whether the particular value was a first change or not. So we'll be updating and changing this counter, incrementing and decrementing it again and again. So this particular variable is going to give us a clue that whether the variable was changed first time or not. So I'm going to write the first change. Let me scroll on the right side. So this is the first change equals to, and it can be received from that change dot first change. So this change has to be from, let me add this curly braces. Okay, so now we need to actually print this change log in our UI. Let me see what got wrong here. It is throwing an error. So actually we are already adding this parentheses. We don't need to add it over here. So this was an error. Now let me save this file and I'm gonna go to this HTML and let me output this data. So here I'm going to write div ng for, and then I'm going to write let log of change log. Okay. So inside it, I'm going to create a p tag and then I'm going to print the log since it is a string. So I hope that it will work fine. So if I go over here, so whenever that particular component will trigger, let me zoom in. So that component is triggered, the child component, and whenever that child component is going to be triggered, this ngOnChanges hook will be automatically triggered. Okay, so it is currently showing that this is the hook which is running, and this is the my counter, and this is actually the variable name. It's showing that this variable got changed, and this variable is referring to the input decorator that we have used to create this variable, and this is the current value which it got from the parent component. And first time it did not receive any previous value because this is the first time and it should not have any previous value, and the first change is true. Okay, now let's try to increment it. You can see that whenever the new value is changed in the parent component and it got passed into the child component, then again this ngOnChanges got triggered. Okay, again with this variable, and there is a current value as well and there is a previous value as well. You can see if I zoom in, and the previous value was 23 at the end, and this is the current value, and first change is false. And if I keep on clicking on it, it will keep on printing that this is the current value, this is the previous value, and the first change will be again false every time because we are not changing this value first time. All right, so this particular hook is very important whenever there are a lot of input variables in our child components, and we need to detect that which variable got changed and which variable did not got changed. Okay, in that case we need to use this ngOnChanges, and in order to elaborate that, let me quickly create another variable in my parent component. And for now I'm not going to make it private, so let me create the second value. Okay, and it is of type number, so I'm just going to add the 111. Okay, so this second variable, I'm not going to create any other function to set or get it. I can directly use it in my HTML. So in my HTML file of the parent component, I can pass this second value over here. So I can write the second value, and it is of type the second value, and this is the variable that I have created, but the child component needs to receive this second value. So I'm going to click here and I'm going to receive it in the child component. So I'll again be using the input decorator. It has created a lot of these, I don't need these, so I'm going to name it second value over here. So second value, and it is of type number, and it is optional first time. So I'm going to write the console.log, and I'm going to add the changes simply like this. So let me save it now. Actually, I forgot to save my app HTML file. So let me save all these files. And if I go over here and if I refresh, we will see that ngOnChanges got triggered 2 times because ngOnChanges is detecting that there are 2 input variables, and both of these variables values are coming from some parent component. So you can see that this is ngOnChanges, and this is the my counter variable, and this is the second value variable. So it means that it received 2 values from the parent component, and this is the current value, this is the undefined, and this is what we know. And in my console window, you can see that this is the object contains in the changes variable, which is a part of simple changes over here. This is the changes, and the changes will be an array, and we can iterate through it into this multiple variables. So this is actually, it is an object. So object is containing multiple objects inside it. All right, so you need to refresh your knowledge for this. So this is the my counter and this is the second value. Now if I increment my first variable, increment it, now you can see that this is the value it got printed and it did not print the second value. The reason is that second value did not change, only the first value got changed, and that's why this changes variable only printed the first value, my counter, its current value, previous value, and also if we log it, you can see that it only contains the my counter. All right, so my counter is only received over here and second value is not received. So we have understood that whenever there are multiple input elements, first time the ngOnChanges will be executed for all those input variables. Okay, but second time it will be executed and it will be containing the values only for those variables which are changed. Okay, so this is the current understanding of our ngOnChanges. And let's move towards the ngOnInit hook, and this is related to this ngOnChanges. So I'm going to implement ngOnInit as well after implements. So onInit, and it will be imported at the top. You can see this has been imported, and now I'm going to write the ngOnInit. All right, and let me log something inside it. So console.log, and it is ngOnInit, and let me add the change log as well. So change log push ngOnInit. So let me save it and let's go. Let's refresh, and now you can see that the ngOnChanges actually executes for all the input variables first time whenever the component is mounted, and then the ngOnInit executed only once. Okay, so if I increment it, you can see that the ngOnChanges keep on triggering because I'm changing the first variable, which is my counter. And the ngOnChanges only triggers first time whenever the component mounted, and it does not trigger second time no matter what happens in our component. So what we do with the ngOnInit hook is we initialize all the variables. So let's say we have hundreds of or maybe dozens of variables in this child component, and we have not assigned any initial value to it. So in ngOnInit, on the component mount, you can initialize those variables. You can fill up those variables either by calling any the JSON file from your folder structure, or you can call APIs to fetch the data and fill up a particular variable. That can be array, that can be multiple objects, that can be an array of objects. So you can use this particular hook to fill up the variables which are initialized in the component, and it will be initialized only the first time. Okay, so this was simple hook, and we use this hook a lot in order to initialize our variables. All right, and there is a third hook as well, which is called ngOnDoCheck, ngDoCheck. Okay, and this is also a very important hook, and it is quite related to this ngOnChanges hook. So let's go ahead and learn what this ngDoCheck hook do in Angular 16. So for this, let's first go to the parent component. In here, I'm going to create another variable, and I'm going to name it numbers, and it is an array. So it is of type number array, and it will be an empty array, right? And for now, let's keep it like this, and I'm going to go to the HTML file, and inside it I'm going to pass these numbers as well to my child component. So I'm going to pass it like numbers and then equals to numbers. Okay, and it will be passed to child component, and I need to receive it in the child component. So in the child component, I can use the input decorator again in order to receive it. So I can write input, and then I can call it numbers again because I've given this. So I'll make it optional initially. So it will be of type numbers array. Okay, so now let's create ngDoCheck hook. So here it is a hook, and it is automatically detected what I want to write. So it pretty much understood my context, this tab 9 Pro AI Assistant extension of VS Code. But I need to import it over here as well. So do check and ngOnDestroy. I'll be uh, creating this ngOnDestroy hook at the end of this video. So it is actually throwing an error. Let's quickly fix it and import it from the Angular core and quick fix this ngOnDestroy. And it is giving an error because we are not actually adding this ngOnDestroy hook, so I have removed it. All right, so now let me also add a value of numbers after this. So I'm going to add this. I'm going to use this notation to actually add and show the value. So I'm going to add this question mark, the dollar sign, and I'm going to write this dot numbers dot toString. Okay, so now I need to end it with the curly braces. Let's save it. And now let's go to our browser, and I'm going to show you something cool stuff here. So here you can see that it actually, we understand why it is printing the previous values now, like the counter, second value, and the numbers. Okay, so these three values are received from the parent component, and this is getting printed from ngOnChanges hook. Okay, and we know that ngOnInit also triggers one time, and ngDoCheck actually triggers 5 times. So the first time it triggers whenever it detects that ngOnChanges hook exists, and whenever that is going to be triggered, even though it is not receiving any value change, still ngDoCheck is going to get triggered. Okay, and ngDoCheck also gets triggered when it detects that ngOnChanges also existing in the component. Okay, and this ngDoCheck, the three ngDoCheck actually triggering because it detects that there are three values received by ngOnChanges hook. Okay, so I hope you understand why it got printed 5 times. And now if I click on the increment, you will see that it actually printed ngOnChanges, and it also showed this ngDoCheck. Okay, because it has to be executed, and whenever new value comes in ngOnChanges hook, it should always be triggered. I want to add another function in my app component, and inside it I'm going to change the value of numbers. So I'm going to add, and inside it I can push a new value. So this dot numbers dot push, and I can just push one inside it. Currently the array is empty, and in order to trigger this function, let me go to the HTML, and I can add a new button over here. So I can add the button, click, add, and then the add. Okay, so let me save it now. Let's refresh. And now if I increment, as you know that it should be printing this, and then it detected it should be printed this. Now let me go and click on the add button. If I click on the add button, imagine that this value is getting changed in the child component as well, this numbers. Okay, so you might be thinking that this ngOnChanges will be triggered because this is an input decorator variable, and this number got changed, and this simple changes should be taking the value of the number. So let's go and try that. If I click on add, you will see that only ngDoCheck hook actually got triggered. Why ngOnChanges did not got triggered? Even though this number value got changed. So I'm going to explain you very important concept here, and this is called primitive types, non-primitive types, or you can say it passed by reference or passed by values. So any variable which are integer, double, string, booleans, or any these values are called primitive types. So whenever these primitive type variables we initialize it allocates a memory location in our RAM of the system. Okay, and whenever its value gets changed, I'm talking about the primitive types, its value gets changed, it allocates a new memory location in the RAM. And this particular hook, ngOnChanges, only detects those variables whose memory location have been changed but not the value inside it. Okay, so this is how the programming languages are built, that all the primitive types are passed by value, means that whenever the string, number, boolean, or any such value gets changed, it leaves its previous memory location and allocates a new memory location where it stores the updated value. Okay, but array and objects are non-primitive types values, means that array and objects are going to take the same memory location even though its values gets changed because of performance, because arrays can be so large, objects can be so large. So that's why the JavaScript is implemented in a way, and including all other languages as well, as far as I know, that the arrays and objects don't change its memory location. It updates the same memory location whenever its value gets updated. It can be an array of hundreds of values. Its value on the 97th index gets changed, it will not leave its memory location. Okay, and here comes this ngDoCheck hook triggers. So ngDoCheck hook also triggers whenever the array and objects values gets changed, even though its memory location in the RAM is not getting changed. Okay, so let me explain you that if we go ahead and rather than pushing 1, I'm going to re-instantiate this number value as a whole. I'm not going to change the value inside it. Instead, I'm going to remove the number and I'm going to change its memory location, and I'm going to re-initialize this whole number array. So let's see then if our ngOnChanges hook triggers or not. Okay, so here I'm going to be reinitializing it with the 1, and the way to do it, numbers equals to dot 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 this dot numbers and then 1. Okay, and it is actually cloning this whole array by adding a 1 and reinitializing the numbers. I'm going to save it now, and let's go to the browser, and I'm going to refresh, and I'm incrementing, decrementing, and as you know, it should be existing. Now if I click on the add, check here guys, so it is actually showing that this is the number, and the number is also getting changed, and ngDoCheck is also getting triggered. So the reason it is got triggered because this number array memory location got changed as well. Okay, so I hope that you have understand the concept about the pass by reference, and difference between the primitive types and non-primitive types, and it is quite related to ngOnChanges. So whenever you want to make some changes from the parent component inside arrays or an objects, you need to handle it inside the ngDoCheck hook. And whenever you want to receive the values which are the primitive types, like the single value in a variable, then you can receive it in the ngOnChanges hook. Okay, so this was the concept of the first 3 lifecycle hooks in Angular. The next hooks are pretty simple, so let's go ahead and learn what we have next in Angular 16. So next hook we have is ngAfterContentInit. So let's try to add its function over here. So it is ngAfterContentInit. Okay, so let me first try to log it. So console log ngAfterContentInit. Let me save this file. I'm gonna go to the browser and I'm going to refresh, and on the console window you can see that it actually first showed the ngOnChanges, then ngOnInit, then ngDoCheck, and then ngAfterContentInit. Okay, and after that it actually printed this ngDoCheck multiple times, 4 times actually. Okay, so the purpose of this ngAfterContentInit is to check if the content projection is done. So if you are using Angular, you know that we can pass some content from the parent component to the child component. Let me pass it from the HTML. So from here inside it we can add more HTML content from this app. But for now, just for explaining you guys, we can directly send hello, this is coming from parent component content projection. Okay, so I'm going to save it, and I can receive this string in the child component, and wherever I want to show, I can actually set its placement for the content which is coming from the parent component. So in order to set its placement, I can use the ng content directive actually. So ng content, and here, so it will be shown below the counter. So let me try to save it and let's show you. So you can see that this is the line which is coming from the parent, and we have actually set its position over here. We can change its position if we want to change its position above counter. Let's change its position, and now you can see that its position is changed. So let me also add it in the change log. Okay, I'm going to save this file and let's go. So here you can see that it actually printed one time after ngOnInit and ngDoCheck, and it is working in the same sequence the way we are actually adding over here. Okay, and if I try to increment or decrement or even click on the add, this particular hook will not get triggered. Okay, so we need to use this particular hook to check if the content coming from the parent component actually got initialized successfully, and we want to make some kind of complex computations on those content which is being coming from the parent component. So I don't use this hook a lot. I use above 3 hooks a lot. Also the last hook that I'll be talking about, which is ngOnDestroy. So it depends upon the scenario and the requirement of your project, and you can think of it if you are passing some content from the parent component. So we have a next hook which is called the ngAfterContentInit. So it automatically detected that what I'm going to write over here. So I'm going to press tab and it will be selected, and let's try to save it now. Let's go to browser, let's go to refresh, and now you can see that this ngAfterContentInit only triggered one time. Okay, but ngAfterContentChecked will be triggered after this ngAfterContentInit hook, and every time after this ngDoCheck hook. Okay, so if I click on the increment, you will see that this ngDoCheck will be triggered, and also it detected that this triggered and I also need to trigger it. And if I click on the decrement, it will be triggered, and if I click on the add, you will see that it will be triggered again. Okay, so this initialized function, so what I experienced it, any hook that ended with the init, it only initialized once. Even if it is ngOnInit or ngAfterContentInit, but anything ended with the check, it actually triggered multiple times after this ngOnChanges or after doCheck. So it is actually used to detect that the content projection which is coming from the parent component successfully initialized, and we want to check that if these are initialized successfully, and we want to do some kind of DOM manipulation after that, let's say using the renderer tool library from Angular core or the element ref. We want to make the changes in the color of the text or the content which is coming from the parent component. So use this hook to actually do some kind of DOM manipulation on the content which is coming from the parent component over here. It can be string, it can be a complete large HTML. Okay, so now we have another hook next, and that is called ngAfterViewInit. So it automatically detected. Let's try to add it over here. I have saved this file. Let's go ahead, let's refresh. So now you can see that it worked in the sequence: ngOnInit, ngDoCheck, ngAfterContentInit. Okay, and after this it actually showed this ngAfterViewInit, which is, this is the hook which we are trying to print. Okay, and it did not show that after that, because we know it is ending with init, and it is not getting printed again and again, even the ngOnChanges, ngDoCheck or other hooks getting printed. Okay, so this particular hook means that the whole content of your child component, the complete content, not the ng content only, the content projection, but the complete content of your particular component, including the grandchild components if your child component have any. So all the content and HTML is successfully loaded on the browser, on the UI, and we want to make sure it is successfully initialized, and after this we can do anything on that HTML or the UI which is getting generated. Okay, so whenever you want to make sure that the content and the view, the UI, the HTML is initialized successfully, you can perform any action you want in this particular hook. Okay, so the next action you can detect that it will be ngAfterContentInit, and it is ending with the checked, so I'm assuming that it will be triggered every time whenever this is going to be triggered, and it is going to be triggered every time this first hook is going to be triggered. So again, this particular hook is used to check if the content inside your current component or the child component, grandchild component of this component are successfully initialized and verified, the checked, and we want to do some kind of DOM manipulation on the content of this particular component. Okay, then we can do directly inside this hook. Okay, so now we are done with the first 7 lifecycle hook. We have one last hook which is called ngOnDestroy, and I use this particular hook in almost every project. It is very important hook, and I'm actually pushing it over here, and I'm also logging it, and let me save it. I'm gonna go and refresh, and you can see that it did not got printed over here. So first time it will not get printed. So the purpose of this particular hook is that whenever this particular component will get unmounted, means that it will be invisible from the UI, or you have navigated from this page to another page that does not have this child component, then this particular hook will be triggered. I will explain you what are the purpose of this hook and when we can use it. Let me first show you practically that whether my claim that when it gets triggered is true or not. So I'm gonna go inside my app component, and this is the parent component. I'm going to create another variable, and I'm going to name it is visible, and it is of type boolean, and initially our child component needs to be true, means it should be visible. Okay, so now I'm going to create a new function, set visibility, and I'm going to add this dot is visible is not equals to this dot is visible. Okay, so whenever we will be clicking on a button, if it is visible it will become invisible, if it is invisible it will become visible. Okay, so now let's save this file, and I'm gonna go in the HTML file, and I'm going to add a ngIf directive. So I'm going to write ngIf, and inside it I'm going to write is visible variable which I have created. Okay, so by default it will be true, means that if I go to my browser and refresh the page, this variable is true, so it will always be visible. Okay, now I need to create another button. Let me create a button below this app child. So I'm going to create the app this button, click increment, but I don't want to increment, so I'm going to write the set visibility, so show height. This is the text of the button. Make sure you spell this function correctly. I'm going to copy it and paste it so it's correctly added. Now let's see what happens. Keep checking the console window as well. So now I'm going to refresh, and this ngOnDestroy hook is not getting triggered. Now if I click on the show hide, this child component is not getting visible because obviously we have implemented a logic. But if we see the console window, you can see that the ngOnDestroy hook got triggered because we have unmounted that particular component, which is the child component, from the UI, from the interface. So in this case, this ngOnDestroy hook will be triggered. So it is very important hook. And when we use it, I usually use it to actually remove the set timeout or set interval instances which I create in this component, the child component. And if I unmount this component, I want that instances of set interval or set timeout to be ended and to be destroyed, because I don't want to fill up my memory through that set timeout functions. So another way we can do is that whenever the component is unmounted, we want to update our parent components, that this child component is unmounted means it becomes invisible. We can emit the event from here using the output decorator. Just like we can receive the input, we can use the output decorator as well to emit the values from child component to the parent component, and we can do it directly inside this hook. Okay, another way to actually handle this is when we are using the Redux or context API or the any other state management system. We want to fill up any value in the store in using Redux in ngrx use library. Then we can actually dispatch a particular action to the reducer that will be responsible to update the value that this component was unmounted. And also when we call the APIs in Angular, you know that we know the concept of observables and the subscribers to all that observables. So whenever this component is going to be unmounted, we would like to unmount and unsubscribe to that observable, and those subscription we might be doing in ngOnInit. So it's always a better practice to unsubscribe to all those observables which we have done in our component. All right, and it is very important hook, and you can use it in almost every project. All right, so we are done with all 8 hooks of Angular 16, and I hope that you have understood when to use which hook and where to use which hook, and with practical examples. So if you have liked my video, I have spent quite a time and effort for this video. Don't forget to subscribe my channel and hit the bell icon so you can get the notification for upcoming videos. Keep watching my YouTube channel. I'll be creating more videos on Angular, React, Node, Express, and other latest technologies. See you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.